drink to have a nice time. And I really hope and wish for Sri Lanka to get to that situation. If I can change the category in Sri Lanka to something that is more about enjoyment and lower alcohol, I would be very happy.
482.
Redefining business models in the face of evolving consumer needs and globalization. Hi, you're with Echelon's Rocketship Experience 2022, and with us in the studio is Meijboom. I got your name right there.
You got
Absolutely
it.
right. And Maud's the CEO of Heineken in Sri Lanka. She's had a long career at the company in Heineken's a Dutch company.
Correct, yeah.
And she's had a long career in the alcohol industry, particularly at Heineken. So let's start with, you got that global perspective out, and let's look at how that applies to Sri Lanka. The industry, even in Sri Lanka, has been around. The alcoholic beverage industry has been around for a long time. What do you think has changed in the recent past about the industry?
Yeah, if you look at it from a global perspective, because on Monday I celebrated 20 years at Heineken, and I've worked across 7 countries in the world. Right. So if you compare a bit what is happening in the world, is that you see blurring of categories. What was once very traditional, you had your beer, you had your wine, you had your spirits. You see that these categories are merging, are blurring, and that also new categories pop up based on consumer needs. So on one hand, you have, for example, beer mixes, flavored beer coming up, craft beer, of course, but also non-alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic beer, and that is because of the need for health moderation that you see. On the other side, categories like cider that were once very much UK, Australia, New Zealand focused now also travel the world. And that is because people say, hey, sometimes I want something a bit sweeter, I want something with a bit more oomph, and it's not always that I want the same. And so for brewers, they expand beyond beer, and also other spirits companies look at the trend of ready-to-drink mixes that were not there 20 years ago. So there is much more choice, and it's not as set in each category.
So if you look at the portfolio of a brewer outside Sri Lanka, where potentially there's more of these categories available, how much does that traditional part of the brewery business, the beer business, account for in the portfolio versus everything else?
Yeah, in Heineken we say we want to excite consumers in beer and beyond. We are still at the heart, of course, a brewer. But what you see is that, for example, zero alcoholic beer is now, for many brewers, for many markets in the world, over 10% of their sales.
Sure.
And if you look at ciders or beyond beer, that is also growing rapidly. So the part of the portfolio that is just core beer, and then I'm speaking about lagers, pilsners, craft beers, would be the majority still at about 80%, but the beyond beer part is moving rapidly forward because of consumer needs.
Exactly. So what about consumer needs is driving this, do you think? Is it lifestyle, health? What are the choices that determine what people are demanding?
Now, I think what is very nice, if you look at how our parents grew up, there was no internet, there was much less travel, of course. So, they were told, okay, my parents drink this, so this is what is available, and there was not much innovation. But globalization, indeed, if you go on all social media, people can see what is happening in other countries, and people say, hey, actually, when I am with my friends at a dinner party, I want something different than when I am with my friends after playing sports, or just when I'm a night by myself watching a great show on Netflix. I also have different needs. So people recognize, hey, not what is all been served fits my needs. And they also see, what is out there globally? Why can't we have that here? So for us, for the alcohol bev industry, and in order to capture that growth, in order to capture that new generation, you have to innovate.
when you're looking at, you worked in 7 markets, you said.
Yes.
Some of that in Asia.
Correct,
Where
yeah.
in Asia have you worked?
I grew up in Jakarta, but professionally I started in New Zealand in 2013. I worked there for 2.5 years. Big craft beer market, big cider market. Then moved to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. And then before taking on this role, I was in Singapore, but I was responsible for the Asia Pacific region. So I traveled to markets like China, Vietnam, Korea, India.
Sure.
And also Australia and New Zealand. And then you see indeed the differences that occur. But even in Asia, there are a couple of key trends that you see in every market.
So that's exactly my next question.
Yeah.
You know, how is Sri Lanka different to what you're seeing in Asia? Let's keep New Zealand and Europe out of the picture for now. How is Sri Lanka in terms of alcobev different or similar to other Asian countries?
It is different because what you see in Asia, there are a couple of trends. One is sessionability. Young consumers don't want heavy, bitter beer. They want stuff that is light-hearted, so easier to drink. It means less bitter, less hoppy.
Sure.
Second one is lower alcohol.
Sure.
Generally, we see a massive increase in beers that are around 2, 3, 4% ABV because people don't want to drink to that excess anymore.
Sure.
Then another one is flavored beer, and in Asia Pacific, that is particularly wheat beer.
Right.
So it is a more zesty, a slightly sweeter palate, but also again not high in alcohol. Yeah, and then the last one, what you see up and coming is zero alcoholic beverages. So those 4 trends are quite common across Asia.
Summarize those 4 trends first.
So sessionability.
Success.
So that is lower bitterness.
Sure.
Lower alcohol. Then there is flavored.
Flavor.
Yeah.
And zero beer.
And zero.
Is a cider a beer in its construct?
No, it's technically the definition is it's fermented apples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no apple in the ciders that we consume generally, I suppose.
I don't think in Sri Lanka there is a true cider, no.
Oh, okay, right. So if you're seeing these 4 trends in the Asia Pacific region, do you think Sri Lankan consumers would be interested in these? Would be interested in tasting a wider variety of alcobev types, if at all? And what is preventing an industry from innovating in those areas?
I think they would, and that is also why Heineken is here and why we invested a lot. If you see that, from consumers between the age of 21 and 30 years old, everyone has a smartphone. Everyone can see what's going on in the world and what is out there. But also, a lot of people participate in the workforce, and they want to take the maximum out of life. So you work hard during the daytime, and then after work you go out with a couple of colleagues for a drink. I also see that in our office, where the young marketeers, they stay and they work late, and then after they have 1 or 2 drinks, and then they go home. But what is the majority that is on offer in Sri Lanka is 8.8% strong beer. So there is no 4% or 2% or 3% alcoholic beverage available. If you look at the wheat beer, not available. If you look at zero, not available. And why is that? Because the regulations only allow us as brewers to go between 4 and 8.8% beer.
Sure.
And I think, if we are looking to meet consumer needs, but also to increase revenue, innovation, I think, is the way forward, because we are tailoring to a very limited percentage of Sri Lankan legal alcohol consumers.
If you think Sri Lankan consumers are ready for several new types of, alcohol beverages, what would, for instance, the first few of those be that we would potentially, then you as a company would want to try?
Yeah, I hope the competition is not listening, but no. But if you, maybe a market that, some markets that are a bit similar to Sri Lanka, there I would want to make something that is a bit more appealing to people with a slightly sweeter palate and to a lower alcohol need. And then I'm talking about a lot of my friends, like women. A lot of women don't want heavy alcoholic beverages, and they often find beer quite bitter. If you look at like neighboring countries, I mentioned wheat beer. That is something that goes very well, but also something that we call Radler, which is globally a huge category, and it is a mix of beer and natural juice, often citrus juice. And by blending it in the brewery, you create a beer that is about 2.5% alcohol.
What did you call that?
Radler.
Radler. Okay.
Yes.
So it's much lighter than a lager. The
Yes.
lagers are the typically available light beer in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sure. So Maud, the regulations appear to be constricting your ability to maneuver in certain areas, right? You as a CEO still you need to be thinking innovation. You need to be thinking, how you as a company can also grow its relevance.
Yeah.
Whether you have the regulations or not. So how are you approaching this broader challenge of the alcobev industry? Sometimes it has a negative perception in Sri Lanka. That is, as a woman leading a company, an alcobev company, maybe you sort of experienced that. How you navigate?
Yeah, I think Heineken globally is very clear. Our purpose is brewing the joy of true togetherness to inspire a better world. And that is the same for every Heineken country across the world. And there's an important word in that, and that is enjoyment.
Sure.
If I can change the category in Sri Lanka to something that is more about enjoyment and lower alcohol, I would be very happy. I believe in that it is perfectly normal to have with a group of friends 1 or 2 drinks, but the excess consumption, that is not what Heineken stands for. And I also think it's not sustainable in the long term. And it doesn't meet consumer needs of the future, where I mentioned moderation, not drink to just meet functional alcoholic needs, but drink to have a nice time. And I really hope and wish for Sri Lanka to get to that situation quick. And I hope Heineken can lead that.
Sure. So what you're essentially saying is there's a perception that about the alcobev industry, at least in Sri Lanka, that is largely also a result of the restrictions that are applied on the industry. Because your view is that, or Heineken's view is that this is not the sort of company we are.
No.
We want to be where people are having a good time, enjoying a meal, enjoying company, and that's where Heineken wants to play a role, not necessarily in the overconsumption of alcohol.
No, we take pride, and we are all about inclusion and diversity. And for me as a woman, what do I like? I like to go into a store to buy a product, an alcoholic beverage, and feel safe in that store. I like to walk into the store and explore what is out there, because I'm perfectly able to make my own choice based on what I need, whether it is indeed just for me or if I'm entertaining. I think accessibility to lower alcoholic beverage is something that would help tremendously.
So the irony is not being lost here, right? There is, can Maud walk into a bar and order a beer technically in Sri Lanka? And the irony is really great cutting, because you are also leading an alcohol company. It's a peculiar position you are in Sri Lanka, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's why I hope I am the right person to speak about it, that when women earn their own money, when women become independent, and in our workforce, we take pride in fair and equal wage and creating that inclusive environment, that also when we go outside, that people have the same opportunities and choices as men have. Going to an outlet and you feel safe and you can choose and are welcomed, and that someone asks you, okay, Maud, what are you looking for? And that I can say, I'm looking for this or that. I hope that will be stimulated more, yes.
Have you encountered such a regime in any other markets that you have previously worked in?
Not that I'm aware of. No, and if you look at markets like Vietnam, Laos, you see indeed in the social occasion also indeed, there is a lot of happiness, there is enjoyment, people drinking a beer together, singing, dancing. Malaysia, where I have worked, it is common, despite indeed religion or background. So it's
And I'm slightly shifting gears on the conversation here and going beyond the regulatory framework. And you are a woman leading in a industry where it is not so common to have, at least from an Asian or Sri Lankan perspective, female leaders. Has that been an adjustment for your team? How do you sort of enter into a position of a woman leading an alcohol company?
Well, I think Sri Lanka is very open to female leaders.
Okay.
I think I have met many powerful women and diplomats. A lot of ambassadors in Sri Lanka are also female leaders. So I think female leaders are very much accepted. So I haven't felt that at all. It's more that they look at, okay, this is a Dutch lady, what is she gonna do? So maybe the fact more that I was not a Sri Lankan, that was new. And being Dutch, I'm quite straightforward, so I tell it like it is, and I stimulate for people to do the same. So I think they had to get more used to the fact that I say, hey guys, this is not good enough, let's try it another way. Okay, but I would love, and I love for people in my office to do the same. And at first they looked at me like, do you mean that? But now they know that I mean it. I see hands being raised, suggestions being prompted, and I love that. Then you can create much faster acceleration together. So I'm extreme non-hierarchical and all about inclusion and diversity. And maybe the fact that I am a woman helps that, because I'm literally the embodiment of walking that talk.
And how do you grow an industry? Now that you're here, you're leading the company, you need to look at potential for growth. Is there an opportunity? Is there potential for growth, both in the way that traditionally the business has run and also in adjacent areas maybe? Do you see that in Sri Lanka beyond the regulatory framework?
Yeah, I think what I mentioned before, the accessibility to safe alcohol purchases, I think that is important. So that is one thing that I'm a big advocate of. If you have access to quality products, that is always better than buying something where you're not sure where it comes from. So I think that part is important. But also, if you are about responsible consumption and people are in need of healthier options, of lower alcoholic options, about more flavorful options, we should together allow to give that option, and that is globally happening already. And I think Sri Lanka is a modern country in that sense, and there are plenty of opportunities. And like you, if you are at a party and you can't drink, sometimes that happens. I don't know if you want to always drink a sweet soft drink, and there are plenty of opportunities available that we could bring to the market that are not so sweet, not so high in calories, or not so high in alcohol.
How are you leading a culture of innovation within the company? Besides these challenges you have about what defines the industry, the legal definition of what you can and cannot do, you still have to be innovative. You still have to create a culture of sort of putting things together. What's your approach?
The approach is really just, we say we are consumer obsessed. And as originally I'm a marketeer, so you have to have that absolute obsession with consumers. Almost predict what consumers would want before they say they want it. And what does it mean, being consumer obsessed? Knowing what they might need in certain occasions. And that differs per country. For example, a Dutch person in an occasion of party might want something different than a Sri Lankan consumer. So it's not that we can just plug and play all global solutions in the market. You really need to listen, speak to consumers, engage with them, and also hear the customer engagement. So making sure that they engage with consumers every day. So I love going on market visit and just asking, hey, how is this brand perceived? What is happening now? And then you, for example, also get insights that people buy different type of packs for different occasions. So it's not only innovation in flavors or in styles, but also in pack types.
Sure.
And I think what is very important that there are occasions where you can't or do not want to drink beer. For example, if it's after work and later you go to the gym, then I don't want an alcoholic beverage. But we are going out with colleagues and I don't want to feel left out. What we say, always give consumers a choice. And for that we have 0.0 beer, 0.0 Heineken. So that is one. And also I think the moments where you can't because it is simply not safe. We are all about responsible consumption. And globally, when you drive, never drink is a mantra that we really live by. That still happens when people get into the car and they have consumed alcohol. That is not necessary anymore. And there are plenty of solutions out there that also we as Heineken could bring to Sri Lanka and lobby for that. And people don't have to feel left out or less part of the social occasion by drinking a Heineken 0.0.
Anything you think you want to add before we conclude, Maud?
No, maybe just that I hope that, whereas I think I've traveled to many countries in Asia Pacific, and I think Sri Lanka is a developed country. There is good education, the language skills are incredible, digitization. So I just hope that whilst we go through the crisis, there is a big opportunity to grow revenue in the alcohol bev category and doing it in a responsible way. If we could shift from just the 8.8 offering in outlets where maybe not everyone feels comfortable to go to, that would be great. Give consumers choice, because you don't always want the same. Because when you drink, differs per occasion. So if we can change that, I would be very happy. Create enjoyment about this category.
Brilliant. Maud Meijboom, thank you for joining the Rocketship Experience. Great talking to you.
Thank you.